You've seen the title, you know what this is about. Let's get into it. So first of all, why am I making a video about how to memorize things? Well, I intend to start releasing more educational content on this channel. So I thought I would give you a tool that would help you to actually memorize and learn the stuff that I'm teaching. I developed this system during my studies and it helped me get A's in every single one of my papers. So it does work and it is pretty easy, but it does take a lot of effort. So those are two separate things. It's easy to use and easy to memorize things, but it takes a little bit of effort on your part to actually commit that knowledge to your long-term memory. So the concept that makes this system that I've developed so effective is something called spaced repetition. So let's just jump down to my screen here so I can kind of give you a quick explanation of how it works and what it is. So first of all, we're going to start with a graph to kind of explain our ability to retain information over time. So we've got our X and Y axis here. And on the X axis, we have time, which may be in days, perhaps. And the Y axis is in retained knowledge. Pretty straightforward, and we're going to do that in percentage points here. So at the top, we're going to have 100% of that knowledge retained. So obviously this graph is going to be tracking how much knowledge we retain over a given period of time. Now this is going to be quite subjective because it depends entirely on the individual that we're tracking their knowledge retention on. So it could be that you have really great knowledge retention and you just memorize everything, in which case this graph won't apply to you. But for most people, we quickly forget things after learning it for the first time. And this is why we need to revise. So when you're studying, obviously you revise the knowledge that you learn. But we need to work out the best time to revise and how often to revise. And that's where this concept comes in. Okay, so we're going to draw in our first forgetting curve. So this is going to start from when we originally learn the information for the first time. So obviously on day 0 here, that's when we first learn the information. And we're going to assume that you have exquisite short-term memory, so you will initially retain 100% of that information on the first day. So we're going to start at 100, but over time, our memory of that information drops off really quickly. And this isn't good. So obviously we need to stop this curve from dropping out. We need to prevent the forgetting curve from getting too low, because then we just have to relearn everything once again. So let's say we're going to work with 80% retention for when we do our subsequent revisions. So let's add 80% to our y-axis here. And I'm going to draw across a line that kind of just indicates where that 80% mark is. And you can see that our forgetting curve crosses through that 80% mark. And this kind of gives us a bit of an indication of when. So this is our time on the x-axis, and the red line is showing us when we need to do our first revision of this information that we've learnt. So during our revision, we need to go back over all of the information to work out which pieces of knowledge we haven't retained. So we need to work out the 20% that we have forgotten. And what we're going to do with that is we are going to relearn it. So the first thing is we're going to spike back up to 100% thanks to relearning the forgotten 20%. And then of course, once we've done that revision, that knowledge is going to drop off again. So you are going to forget everything a second time round if you don't revise again. So what do? We need to revise yet again. So at that 80% mark where the green line is crossing through, that's when we're going to do our second bout of revision. So again, we work out the 20% that we have forgotten and we relearn it. So it's going to spike back up to 100%. And then the forgetting curve takes over again. And this is going to repeat. So 80%, 20% forgotten, relearn that, and then forget everything. And this is just going to go on indefinitely. So that's our graph. But the key thing here is that you can see that the space between each of these forgetting curves, before they get to the 80% of, or the 20% of the information forgotten, you can see that the space actually gets wider and wider. So from our initial learning to our first revision is quite short, but after revising once, you actually retain that information for a little bit longer. And this is where the repetition part comes in. So remember, we're looking at something called spaced repetition. Every time you repeat a little bit of information, it gets more committed to your long-term memory. And because it's committed to your long-term memory, it's going to take a lot longer for you to forget that information. And that is why the distance gets longer and longer. So we can get longer again, and longer yet again, and after enough repetitions you may have committed everything to your long-term memory and that forgetting curve may no longer exist. That is the key concept behind this. So it's called spaced repetition because we're repeating the knowledge until it's committed to our long-term memory, and the spaced part of that is kind of the space in between those repetitions. And the key idea is that those spaces get larger and larger each time you revise it, because you don't need to revise it as often as more of it gets committed to that long-term memory. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, and that's essentially all for this part of the video. We are going to dive into how to actually set this system up, because I guess you could set it up as physical flashcards and have them all in kind of their individual boxes and have little time codes or timestamps on each of those boxes that you kind of write each day that you revise, and work out which cards go into which boxes and how often you're having to revise each of those boxes. But that would be an absolute nightmare to keep track of. So I have a system that I've set up that works entirely on your computer or even your phone as well. And it keeps track of all of this for you. And it gives you complete control over the length of time that you have between subsequent revisions of each individual piece of knowledge that you're trying to remember. Okay, so here we are on my laptop now, and this is the system. So you can see here that I do have a bunch of flashcards. So just like I was mentioning with physical flashcards, we've just digitized it so that the tracking of that spaced repetition is automated. Makes it a little bit easier for us. So this is a program called Notion, where you have huge possibilities with what you can do with it. I've used it to set up this system that we're looking at here, and I haven't seen anyone else actually use it in this way. I've seen other people create kind of pseudo spaced repetition systems in Notion, but nothing with this amount of flexibility and effectiveness for actually committing information to your brain for the long term. So we're going to go through some of my flashcards that are actually due for me to look at today, and we'll go over how it works and how I use it. So we've got a bunch of flashcards here. So we've got some that have questions in the names here, and then some that are actually pictures that I can open up and have a look at to test myself on. So before we actually open any of these, I'm just going to go over a little bit of what we're looking at. The text here is the title of the flashcard, or in these cases, the questions. We've got different tags for different kind of topics. I'm a little bit obsessed with botany, so you can see that all of my questions are to do with plants. I do have some other kind of categories as well, but none of them have shown up today. And then we've got a number here, which is keeping track of my understanding of these pieces of information. So the higher the understanding, the less often this card is going to be shown to me, and I can update that understanding based on how well I know the card. So this first question here is a fruit that is berry-like with the seeds embedded in pulp. And I believe the term for that is bacate. I just learnt this one yesterday, and we'll check if I've remembered it. Yes, so bacate, saw it yesterday. That's the answer in here. So the key thing here is that you're attempting to answer the question before you check the answer. Because if you don't actually attempt to answer it, you don't get anything wrong. And getting things wrong is the best way to actually learn something. So always attempt to answer the question before you check the answer. All right, so now we've got a little bit more that we can see here. And so we've got our tags. So what kind of category of question we're looking at. We've got our last reviewed. So this question was last reviewed on October the 6th, 2024. And if we check our date today, you can see that we are October the 7th, 2024. So this was last reviewed yesterday. And our next review is today. And that's why it's showing up in my due tab here. So you can see I've got my tab, which is due flashcards. This card is showing up in here because the next review date is today. And then we've got our understanding. So if you look at these two dates here and you see the understanding here, you may be able to work out how this works. So we've got an understanding of 1, and that's actually deciding how long between the last reviewed and next reviewed. So it's a bit of simple math. We've got October the 6th plus I want to review it in 1 day, October the 7th. Because I got this question correct, I can increase the number a little bit now. And you can choose entirely up to you how much you increase this by. So I feel like I can probably remember this for a few more days. So I might increase this to a 3. So I'm not going to see this for 3 more days now. And you can see that when I updated this to a 3, it automatically updated the last reviewed to today's date, because this last reviewed property here is actually keeping track of when I last edited this flashcard in its entirety. So I just edited the understanding property, so that updated our last edited property here. October the 7th plus 3 days equals October the 10th. So now this card will be due on October the 10th, and you can see that it's actually deleted or removed it from this due flashcards view here. So now I've got 1 fewer flashcard to answer here. So we can do one more. This one here is needle shaped, and I believe, so this is talking about leaf shapes here, and the correct botanical terminology for this is acicular. So I can check that now, and yep, I got that correct, acicular. And I last saw this on October the 3rd, which was 4 days ago. So I'm actually going to increase this understanding. Maybe I'll bring it up to 8, because I feel like I know this quite well. And now it's updated the last reviewed to today's date, October the 7th, plus 8 days. I'm not going to see this card until October the 15th now. And yet again, it has removed it from this due flashcards view. I'm going to show you 1 or 2 more of these that work a little bit differently. I've got some that contain images. So you can see I've got an image here, so there's no question. This one does have a question without a trunk that is acoalescent. So I'm going to increase that, maybe a 6. I don't want to see it for 6 more days. And now we're onto the images. So with the images, I've made it so that I can open the card first to view the image, and then I just have to click a little drop-down menu to see the answer. So I'm going to open this. Botanical terminology here. So a stem cross-section or a leaf. And this one here is, the terminology for that is recurved, because I think revolute is where it actually curls in on itself a little bit more. So the answer, recurved. So yep, I got that correct. I'm going to increase this to a 7 perhaps. So this is entirely subjective how much you increase the understanding. Now, some of these I might get wrong. I'm just going to go over one more here. I'm going to guess that I'm probably going to get this one here wrong. So let's just have a look. So it's a plant ID. So I've got a photo. Yeah, I've got no clue what that is. Yeah, no clue at all what that is. I'm not even going to have a guess at it. I'm going to check the answer. Okay, so it's a Formosa lily. There you go. So that's the answer. Got that completely wrong. So I'm going to reduce this down to a 1. So I'm not going to see this until tomorrow. So that has reduced the space between repetitions for this individual flashcard. And again, it's been removed from this view here. and it will show up again tomorrow rather than in 15 days time like it did before. Okay, so that is that view there. I do have another view here, and this is where I have all of my categories. So this is where I actually add new flashcards. So that's the tab here, new flashcards. When I add a card, I come to this view and choose which category I'm adding the card to. As you can see, I've got tons of plant ID cards, tons of botany terminology cards. I've been adding a lot more recently. I hadn't been using it for a little bit because I'd finished my studies, but I decided that I wanted to actually continue kind of progressing my knowledge in these subjects. So I'm going all in once again and basically trying to memorize tons of different things to do with botany. And also a little bit of systematics. I started reading through a plant systematics book, which is a little bit of a geeky one, but nevertheless, we've got a few different categories here, even words. So there was a word that I had forgotten entirely, like it was stuck on the tip of my tongue and I couldn't remember it, so I had to use a thesaurus to try and work out what the word was. Ended up being susceptible, so I added that in there. But you can see I've got a huge understanding on there, so I don't see it very often because I have committed it to memory. Well, hopefully I have. But yeah, if I come across words in the future that I want to help increase my vocabulary, I can add them to that category as well. As you can see, this can be used for a huge array of different things. It's not just for my kind of focus of plants and ecology and whatnot. You can use it for a lot of different things. So that is the introduction to how this system of mine works. And now we are going to learn how to make it from scratch. First of all, we're going to start with a new page. And if you don't have Notion installed on your computer, you may just want to pause here and install Notion. You do have to sign up just with an email. It's completely free though. So we've got our new page here, and we're just going to come down to the 3 dots in the bottom corner before we add anything to the page. If you add anything to the page, we lose those options down the bottom. So just make sure that the page is completely empty, and then we can click on the 3 dots here, and we're going to select table. So select that, and then when this section on the side here opens up, we're going to select the option for new table. If you've just installed Notion, you won't have any existing databases to link to, so just use that new table option there. And I'm going to give it a name, Flashcards. I'm going to call mine tutorial, just so that when I'm done recording this, I don't accidentally delete the wrong Flashcards database, because that would be awkward. And the first step that we're going to do is we're going to change our view, because we're currently looking at it as a table. So we're going to come over to the 3 dots over here, click on those, and we're going to come down to layout, because it's currently a table layout, and I want to change this to a gallery. And you can see that's changed how it's displaying the individual flashcards here. Now, currently you can see that we've got a big empty space here above the title of the flashcard. And this is because currently the layout is set to show what is retained within the flashcard. So I'll show you what I mean by that. If I open this flashcard and write something here, hello world, and if I close back out, you can see that it's actually showing the contents within the flashcard. This is not going to work for us because that is essentially giving away the answer to the question before we attempt to answer it. So we need to hide any content or any answers from showing in this view. So we're going to come back to our 3 dots here, under layout again, and our card preview is currently set to page content, which is a big no-no for flashcards. We're going to change that to none. And now you can see that we've lost that extra kind of area that's showing what's within the flashcard. All right, so we've got our 3 flashcards here now. They're all empty. So every time that you make a database in Notion, it does just start you out with 3 cards, just so that you have something to work with. We're just going to work with this first one here. And let's say that we are making a flashcard to do with geography. So we're going to have our tags here. So perhaps we'll make a geography flashcard. And let's just say, what is the tallest mountain in the world? Just for sake of explanation here, I couldn't think of a better question. And the answer is Mount Everest. And there you go, that is all there is to it. That's a flashcard, but it doesn't have the functionality yet. So it's currently just behaving as any old page. So we need to actually put in those little bits of math that work out the dates and whatnot. So just a little tip here, if you want to make your answers a little bit bigger and more obvious, you can just change what type of text it is here. And the easiest way to do that is to add a hashtag at the start and then a space. And it just changes it to a heading style. So you can see it's heading 1. You can also change it through here. So if you just highlight the text, you can change it through here as well. And that just makes the answer a bit bigger and more obvious so that you don't have to squint to view the answer. And now let's add the functionality. So the first one that we want to add is the one that keeps track of when we last reviewed this piece of knowledge that we're trying to remember. So we're going to add a new property here. And we've got tons of property options here. We're going to scroll down to one called the last edited time. So select that, and I just renamed this to last reviewed, just so it's kind of more in the context of what we're working with here. We're reviewing flashcards. So last reviewed time is essentially keeping track of when we last edited this flashcard. So obviously I edited it today when I gave it a title and I gave it a name. It got edited on October the 7th. So that is property number 1 done. Nice and easy. The next property, also pretty simple. We're just doing a number for keeping track of our understanding, or perhaps you could call it memory. So select the number property, and maybe we will call it memory. So memory or understanding like I had on the other one. And let's say I know this quite well. I don't want to see it for another 150 days because who's going to forget this fact? 150 days. And yeah, that is the second property done and dusted. Now we need to do the bit of math that works out when this flashcard is next due. So we're going to add a new property, and this is probably the most kind of daunting part of this tutorial. We need to do some kind of mathematical formulas here. So we've got a formula option, and don't freak out about this. If this doesn't make any sense for you, just kind of follow along with what I do here and just copy it word for word and you will be totally fine. You only have to do this once and it's automatically set up for any subsequent flashcards that you make in the future. So you don't need to write this formula every time you make a new flashcard. All right, so we're going to call this one next review. And just click out of that. So we've got last reviewed, memory, and next review. If you want to change the order of these, you can just click and drag them to shift them around like that. All right, so we need to tell Notion to add 150 days to October the 7th. Click on the empty box here, and this is where we're going to write in our formula. And don't worry, Notion does give you everything up front. You can kind of just click different functions into the formula automatically. You don't have to type it out, which is nice and simple. So click on empty, and now we have our little formula window that pops up. So we need to find a function called date add. It's near the bottom of this list of different functions. So scroll all the way down. Well, not all the way down, I think I went too far. There it is, so date add. So we're just going to click on that and it's going to add it to our little formula script here. So hover over date add, give it a click, and there it is. So we've got date add, and then we've got our brackets, which is where we're going to provide the variables that are being added together. The first variable is the date that we're wanting to add to. So that is going to be our last reviewed variable here. So click on that while our cursor is flashing within the brackets. So date add within the brackets, last reviewed. Once you've added this, you'll see that the cursor is still flashing after last reviewed. We need to add a comma just to separate the two variables. So we've got last reviewed, comma, and now we need to tell it what we're adding to that. So what are we adding to October the 7th here? And we are adding our memory property or variable. So let's just select that. We're just going to click on that after our comma. So click on that, we've got last reviewed plus memory. However, this formula isn't entirely finished just yet. We do need to provide one more piece of information. The reason for that is because currently we're telling Notion to add these two variables, October the 7th, 2024, and we're telling it to add 150. But we're not telling it what that 150 means. Is it 150 days? Or is it 150 weeks? Is it 150 years? So we need to specify what 150 means. So we're going to add another comma after our number variable, and we're going to type in days within quotation marks because we need to specify what that 150 actually is. And that is the entire formula. Date add, we've got last reviewed plus our memory, which is in the kind of value of days. And now we can click on save. And now it has done our math for us. 150 days after October the 7th is March the 6th, 2025. And that is the entire system set up now. So this is entirely, well, actually it's not entirely functional, but it kind of is. We still need to kind of set up some filter views on this view here. All right, so that is done. What I'm going to do now is actually set up the other views because you remember I had a due flashcards tab and a new flashcards tab. So we're going to do that now. So select your gallery tab and we're just going to rename it just to make it a little bit more simple. So we've come over to the right hand side here, due flashcards. And press enter on your keyboard. And now let's add our second view. And we're going to make this one a board. And this is because having those multiple categories, it's a little bit easier to keep them segregated as boards when we're adding new ones in. So we've got our geography category here. Maybe we have another category for botany. And you can click and drag these around to whatever order you want. And yeah, so that's our two views. Let's just rename this one as well. So board, let's just call this one new flashcards. And there we go. So next up, we now need to actually make this view here show the correct flashcards because it shouldn't be showing this flashcard currently because it's not due for another 150 days. So we need to use something called a filter. This part is also a little bit, takes a little bit of logic just to wrap your head around it. So we're going to come over to this little icon here, which is our filter icon, while we are on the due flashcards tab, not on the new flashcards tab. I should just explain really quickly that these views both show the same cards. So yeah, we've got the what is the tallest mountain in the world, and it is again repeated here. Anything that I edit on this tab, so if I edit this card to be hello, you'll see that it automatically has updated it on this tab. So just keep that in mind that these views can show the same information, but they don't necessarily have to. If we filter one of these views, it may filter out some cards on this view specifically, but they will still remain showing on this view. So under our due flashcards, we're going to click on our filter icon, and we're going to come down to our add advanced filter option here. And so yeah, this is where we're using a little bit of logic just to specify which cards we want to show. So this is our properties here. So I want to be filtering by our next review date. So select next review, leave it as start date. Sometimes properties can have a start date and an end date if you're recording a range of dates, but we aren't. We just have a single date. So we've got start date, and we're going to specify that it is on or before today. So just change this one to is on or before. And that's all you need to do. So we've got next review is on or before today. And you can see that has removed every single flashcard from this view because none of these cards are due today. If I jump back to our new flashcards view, you can see that they are still all showing because there's no filter applied to this view. Let's just make this hello card due today perhaps. So what we can do, let's just pretend this is a botany question as well. If we set our memory to 0, you can see the math that was done here. October the 7th plus 0 days is still October the 7th. And remember our next review, October the 7th, which is on today. So our filtered view should show that hello card now. And there it is. So you can see hello is showing because it is due today. The reason our filter, if I just open up that filter again, the reason it is on or before today means that it will capture any cards that we don't review. So if I don't review this one today, it will remain in this view tomorrow and the next day and indefinitely until I actually get around to reviewing it. And this just makes sure that we don't miss any cards. For example, if it was just is on today, or is today, then it would capture hello today. But if I didn't answer this flashcard and it rolled over to tomorrow, this card would disappear from the view and I'd probably never see it again. So we need to be able to capture those cards that we don't review, because some days you may just have a hectic day and you have no time to sit down and answer your flashcards. Next up, we do have one card in here with no memory value. If this is the case, let's pretend we made this flashcard and it is information that we do want to remember. It's not just hello world. If it's information that we want to remember, but we just totally forgot to add a memory value to it, you can see that we have an empty next review date. And what that does is it also will never show up in this due flashcards view. So I may really want to commit hello world to my long-term memory, but because of this oversight of forgetting to add a number, it is going to never show up in my due flashcards and I'm never going to learn it or memorize it. So all we need to do is add another filter rule to that existing filter. So if this little drop down thing isn't showing for you, you just need to click on the filter button again to make it show. So you can see that just kind of toggles that on and off. So click on our one rule here and we need to add a filter rule. And we're just going to select add filter rule. And we need to change this first bit to or rather than and specify that memory is empty. So this is the entire filter rule now. So we've got where next review is on or before today. So that's capturing cards that are due or overdue, or where our memory property has been left empty. Now that I've added that filter in there, you can see that both cards are showing. So now when I'm answering my flashcards, I may come across this one. I'll attempt to answer it and then I'll realize, oh, I forgot to add a memory number to this. So then you can add one in. We're going to put a 2 in there so it's not due until the 9th. And now you can see that it's gone from the view, but it will show up in 2 days' time. Same with our hello world. Maybe I don't want to see this for 3 days' time. Now that one is gone from the view as well. But again, they're still showing in this view here. A couple more things that I had set up on my personal flashcards database. I'm just going to change these back to 0 just so that we can explain this a little bit better. Okay, so now we're going to jump back to our due flashcards view, and these 3 should all be showing because they're all technically due today because their understanding is set to 0. There they are. But you may have noticed, I'm just going to hide the filter there. You may have noticed that in my personal flashcards database, I had the extra information showing. I had the amount of understanding that I had and also what category it is, which can be a little bit helpful when you're answering a question if you're not sure kind of what topic you're answering the question about. So how we do that is under our properties. And I'm just going to, so you can see that these ones are all hidden. We've got an eye icon with a line through it. So I'm going to show the memory property, and I'm also going to show the tags property. And there it is. So that's our tags and our memory. Alright, so I was just editing the video and I just noticed that I didn't go over how to create new flashcards in too much depth. So I'm just going to go over that really briefly. So we've got our due tab and we've got our new tabs. Remember, the new flashcards tab is where we go to add new flashcards to any of our categories. So I've just got an example one to create here, and the way that you add a new flashcard is, well, they are just pages, but we're using them as flashcards. But it's just these little plus buttons here, and whichever plus button you choose, it's going to create a flashcard for that category or topic. If you're wanting to add new topics, there is another plus at the very end here, which, not this plus, but this plus here adds a new category. So we could make a new category here, and let's just go with that geography example that I made up during the tutorial. So that adds a new topic there. Anyways, adding a new flashcard itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. If you're making like a question one, what is a stipule? And then you open that flashcard, and then you just write in a leaf-like structure. Give it an understanding, 50 perhaps, and that's a new flashcard created. So that's pretty straightforward, nice and easy. For the image ones that I demonstrated, so ones like this, they take a little bit more to create. So I'm just going to go over that for you now. Create a new card as usual, and I just give mine kind of a hint that it is an image and kind of indicating that it's safe to open it without giving away the answer. And my one here, I'm going to create I'm going to go to my desktop. I've got an image that I want to add, so you can just click and drag the image into Notion. So it's super easy, just like that. And now that that has been added, we need to add a little drop down box that we can then click on to reveal the answer afterwards. So to make a drop down or a toggle box, it's just the greater than symbol, and then just press spacebar and it converts it to a toggle. And then I'm just going to go answer, and then within the box you can then write in the answer. And the answer for this is crenate, and I might need to add a little bit more detail to what is actually meant by this, because the image by itself may not really give it away. So I want to add a little bit of text above this image, but it can be a bit tricky to click. So one tip is you can actually go to the title here, and if you go to the far end of it and press enter, it actually drops it down to here. And I'm going to just make a little question here. What type of leaf margin? And then we've got the answer in there. And then again, make sure to give it an understanding. I know this quite well, so we're going to give that a 60. And there you go. That's how you do the images. So there you have it. So you can either click and drag images straight from your desktop. I believe you can just click and drag them from the web as well if you find an image on the web that you want to use. And yeah, super simple. Well, there you have it. That's my flashcards spaced repetition system. Hopefully I explained it well and that you were able to follow along step by step and kind of understand what it was that we were doing. If you've set the system up with me, please let me know down in the comments so that I know who I've helped. And yeah, please use this for any future videos that I create, because I do plan on releasing more educational stuff. So hopefully the information that I share with you can actually be put to some use and committed to that long-term memory that we've been talking about so much in this video. That is all. I will see you in the next one.